guess we're technically starting, but I'm gonna say this, and I feel like we do this way too often. We're usually better about it, as we've done 300 plus episodes, Jess, and I don't know how many episodes of Unscripted, but my dumbass brings up a topic before we start recording, and we lay down gold, but we didn't lay it down.
I don't remember any of it now at this point.
I'll do my best to recreate it, but I feel really bad about it. So there was a quote on socials this week from Triple H, just calling some media industries you're just old, and there's a lot of constructive coming from that. And he said, look, even the stuff that I like is not what people like today, and I have to find what people like today and produce that as best I can, because the minute that doesn't happen, I'm gone, or we're dead. It doesn't work anymore. And I looked at that, and the first thing I thought of, and you guys brought up great perspectives that I hope you can bring back in the conversation, was storyline. And I'm like, that's not true, at least not entirely. I feel that what Triple H has done, and he'll never give himself the credit, because he'll look stupid if he does. He'll look like he's a big egomaniac, which you have to be in this industry to begin with. Look at Vince. The fact that Triple H is telling multiple long-term storylines is what's brought WWE wrestling and wrestling in general back to a peak that I'm not even sure if we've seen. I mean, this kind of popularity with casuals and the type of, let's be frank, the type of ticket prices they can charge, and the fact that WrestleMania is going to be like $1,000 a seat in most places, is because of the long-term storylines that he's told, which is what we were all begging for, which we saw when we were kids that they got away from, because, people can't hold their attention span for so long, blah, blah, blah. So we just got to, change the title, 7 times, 8 times a year. Now we've seen an IC champion that broke a major record of holding in Gunther. We've seen Roman hold the title for longer than Hogan did, I think, for one reign. No, not technically. No, sorry.
That never.
How long was it?
Just shy.
Just shy. Very close.
Very
okay.
Close,
it's like 3 months shy.
Yeah.
3 months shy, and that's totally fine. All I'm saying is that's impressive in this day and age, where we would never thought we would see something come close to a Hogan title reign in the range of longevity. And I just feel that it's not about being old. It's about some of it getting back to basics and really telling a decent story. But you guys brought up some interesting facts too about how people watch and everything else.
It's always going to. Go ahead, Joe.
No, I was just going to say, I feel like when he was making that comment, obviously, he was probably talking about a variety of stuff, but I felt like he was discussing more, every generation hates the generation that came after them, So we were talking beforehand, mm-hmm. During the 80s, Bruno Sammartino hated everything that WWF was doing just because it wasn't what they did and what he liked. So he hated Hogan's guts, even though Hogan kind of did basically the same thing that he did.
Right.
He as he got older, he hated Hogan, and he hated the direction that it was going. Then you have the late 90s, early 2000s, when you have the styles of, you had a style clash where you had classic guys who kind of just did punch, kick, stomp, body slam style wrestling, trying to wrestle guys like Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio Jr. and Chris Benoit and Kurt Angle that had this different style. Then you fast forward, I feel like he's every old guy from from the Attitude Era, from even Ruthless Aggression Era, just bitches and moans about the style of wrestling today. Kevin Nash is always I hate Will Ospreay, or I hate this, and all the flips and whatever. It's it's just something, you just don't like it. It's a new style. I don't always like I think we talked about when two guys of that style have a match together, it does feel a little too choreographed. It feels a little too scripted. And it feels more like a dance or some sort of gymnastics show as opposed to a wrestling match. But I feel obviously a lot Ospreay, Ricochet, those style guys, people are going crazy for them, and they love that. A lot of people like it. So it's just the Kevin Nashes of the world are just bitching about the new generation.
Everyone has leaned into the fact that wrestling is now a weekly episodic television show, where years ago, before the Monday Night Wars, Vince was a traveling show, so his house show tickets mattered. That was such a big revenue for him. and it kept his business
The
afloat.
gate.
So his syndicated televisions they were info commercials to get you to go out to your local city when they would come in, whatever local arena you had, and go see them. And then the pay-per-views were just kind of the blow off of those feuds, and it keeps you energized or whatever. Now the business model is shows like tonight on SmackDown. They did now they're advancing the storyline with all these theatrical promos now, where it's like just a dark room with just one spotlight, and Paul Heyman was sitting and Roman was sitting to his left, and they just started the scene, and he's like, "Wise man, where is he?" And he's like, he is coming, sir. And then Punk comes in, and Punk, knowing he's late, sits down, looks at his watch. He's like, "Man, you need to hurry. We don't have a lot of time left." And then that pissed Roman off.
That's
he's
lovely.
Like, oh yeah, you walk in late or whatever, and then they're advancing the storyline that way. They fully know that this is a movie scene that they're doing, and it's going to advance the storyline, but they're not beating us up with it like they used to. It's all like Triple H is half right. Like it's all about how like the head of whatever promotion adopts that. Like Tony Khan doesn't know what he wants AEW to be. So he might have these Ricochets and Will Ospreys and MJFs, but he doesn't know how to put the puzzle together to make it offset each other. Like you don't want Ricochet versus Osprey too much, because what we were talking about before we record, even if it was their match 10 years ago where they're both young and crisp and quick, or the sloppy, like they're way more athletic than I could ever be, right? So who am I to judge?
It was slow.
But now they're
slow.
later in their career, and they tried to revive it on Dynamite, a couple months ago or whatever, and it looked way worse than what it had done. They had done 10 years before. Obviously, they're 10 years older. I get it, but at the same time, like that's what's going to keep happening if you put the same product from top to bottom of your card over and over again. You're going to fatigue the audience because it's the same thing. Yeah. To parlay into, because Full Gear was last week, so we won't spend too much time, but it was probably their worst pay-per-view I've ever seen them have. And I only say that because there was no bad matches. We're so spoiled now that when a pay-per-view is not bad, it's not because there was botches or anything. There was none of that. Like everybody knows how to wrestle. Everybody did fine. And I say it was probably the worst pay-per-view because they were so good before at putting a good pay-per-view together. I just felt like their marquee matches were all the same. It was high spot kick out, high spot kick out, high spot kick out. And it was too much. And it kept happening match after match after match. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, like, just can you give me something different? Can you give me something? And that's just Tony Khan. That's the promotion, not understanding how to do it. Triple H knows full well when to pull I need that match to happen here, but I need a slower match to happen here. I need a storyline driven match to happen here. And so he's very
I need
good.
A quick pin here.
Yeah,
I need a brutalizing pin
it's
here.
It's really all about the promotion and how they want us to perceive it. And if you see the needle moving in the up direction when you do something, you gravitate towards it. You don't pollute your entire roster with that. You just go, okay, this feud with this style of wrestling is what the crowd wants from these people. I'm going to keep giving it to them, and we were talking about the people who understand how to slow it down. You want Ospreay to get in there and do all of his shit, but then you want that one heel to just step forward and punch him in the face when he tries to flip.
Joe brought MJF as an example.
Yeah, he needs to slow it down. MJF can completely, like Joe said, keep up step for step with almost anybody in there. But he's like, but I'm not going to. Why would I do that? Like, you're going to do your shit, and then when I've had enough as a heel, I'm just going to give you a right hand straight to your mouth. And then you're going to stop, and I'm going to stop the match, and the crowd's going to get pissed that I did that, and I'm going to milk it. I mean, it's just basic pro wrestling, but I mean, it's how you can make that style of wrestling last longer and work. You can't just keep doing the Will Ospreay style, match number 1, match number 2, match number 3, because after a while it's like, what are we doing here?
Well, again, and I think it goes into that idea of not only the storytelling outside the match, but the storytelling inside the match, and that ring psychology that makes the match good. And also, how many times have we watched a pay-per-view where you're like, I don't think that match shouldn't have gone there. It should have gone somewhere else. So even match placement throughout the card is so important.
And I know that some people
you don't want the audience to be fatigued.
Some people have to fight, but wins and losses matter because you're telling stories about how good or not good someone is. So you could still take a loss and get over more. I'm not saying that doesn't happen. Sometimes the winner is the loser and the loser is the winner. Austin and Brett comes to mind. It's just. But that's all. That was derivative of a storytelling and a storyline. But with AEW, the match that I think stole the show and was easily an A+ was Kyle Fletcher and Ospreay, because they had a storyline behind it because they both personally know each other and it's well known. But Kyle Fletcher has turned heel and he's evil, and they did a match their style, but Kyle Fletcher did, when he would do things, it was personal. Like, so when he would cheat, it was like he knew he was cheating and it was pissing Ospreay off, and Ospreay sold it well. And then Kyle Fletcher won clean. And it was everybody was like, holy shit, like, you want to put a guy over, this is what you do. And it was because he hated Ospreay so much, and he's like, I'm just tired of like what you do and like the way you treat me. And like, it was just all very personal. That's why everybody was into that match, and that's why I got an A+. It wasn't because they did a lot of flippy shit, but it was very personal. So when Kyle Fletcher would get it, it was like, oh, he's driving those elbows in harder, or he's disrespecting Ospreay. That's why he turned on him to begin with. And that's why that worked. But if they just went out there and didn't pay attention to the storyline and had just a back and forth or whatever, it would be like any other match that we could see. Great flips, super athletic, awesome. But when you put that kind of like that little nastiness behind it, or one of the guys is angry and jealous, like, that makes it okay. Like, that's pro wrestling, and that's just that's what they need to do more, So I'm hoping that this was their attempt at trying to advance storylines, and that's why, because the crowd wasn't into it. The crowd's lost faith in them, I think, a little bit, and they don't really want to get into a lot of stuff. But there were really good matches on the card, like really good. But I mean, like, it was some of it just, there was no energy. None of the matches flowed. It was just weird, like, underwhelming feeling. And I don't know. I hope it's not. I hope it was them figuring out, like, we got to start developing stories more, and then stories develop characters, and then I'm hoping that maybe that's where they're going, because next year
the best storyline that I recall in AEW is MJF's title run. The stuff that they did within that title run and the stories they told, because MJF is good at telling stories about his next opponent and what they had to do. That's, I hate to say that, it's all MJF. You can
also tell too that in WWE there's one creative voice, but there's a bunch of producers. In AEW there's a million different creative voices, and so you'll see one match that's done perfect, and you're like, why can't the rest of the show be like that? Not move for move what they just did, but why can't it tell a story? Well, it's because you don't have a final say. Tony Khan acts like he's the final say, but it's just more of like
too many roosters.
Hey, Don Callis and Fletcher and you guys got this? Okay, I'll do whatever you want to do. Like, just make sure he goes over or whatever. Like, and that's how it used to be.
I think that's what's happening.
Well, that's how it used to be, but it can't be that way when you're putting on a television product every week. It has to almost all make sense together. Like, when you were a territory and you were traveling and you were doing that before, sure, like that works. Sure. But nowadays in 2024, you can't. Like, it all, even though it's a different storyline and a different speed match, it has the WWE dust on all of it. And you could tell that it's the WWE dust. It's the production, it's everything. That's always the same. Like, but AEW, it's almost like every match, I'm like, you could tell someone totally different like did this, because the camera angles are different, and then the next match it's completely different, and I'm like, dude, they gotta find a way to stitch it all together. And we're in the age of weekly episodic television programming, and if you don't get on that boat, and now they're streaming with a platform, and it's going to go that way. So if you don't get on that boat now, you're going to be lost. You're just not going to have any kind of product that. What is AEW? I don't know. Like, WWE is an entertainment company, and you can say that, and they are. And I mean, I know that sounds generic, but that is what they are. Like, they're like, we want you just to be entertained. Like, yes, we wrestle, that's what we do, but we want you to be entertained. AEW is like, I don't know what we are. Like, we just do things. We're just. Well,
I think that I every time I was like AEW, I always get the impression, and we all did like acting, at some point in our lives or whatever. And I'm, it's like when you're doing when we would do like a show that was a comedy, like you would oftentimes find something that was funny and you laugh that first time.
Right.
But then like the 10th time you do it, you're starting to get bored. So you want to start tweaking it, and you want to tweak it every time. It's like, no. You have to continue to go and stop tweaking it. I feel like AEW is trying, they're like, because he's given a little bit of creative control to so many kind of people that they get bored with what they're doing. So they're like, oh, I'm going to change it this week. Oh, I had a good idea. I'm going to change it this week. So it feels like what Vince was doing, and they're, as opposed to having
100%.
some sort of
it actually is. It is what Vince was doing.
Big picture.
Yeah.
As opposed to having this big cohesive big picture, it's choppy like mini stories that don't have any that don't come to completion, or they aren't told in the right way. There's no depth given to them because they're not giving it's like they're not giving enough oxygen in the
yeah, Joe. It's a good point.
Let them breathe.
You talked about theater, and just because you've done it 12 times, someone's seen it for the first time, right?
Yeah, that's
and
the
you
whole
have
thing
to keep
about
it.
Yeah,
you have to keep that bite where it needs to be, because if you overdo it, they're like, why? I don't get it. But if someone had seen it 10 times, I see what you did because I saw it before. But as you're advancing the storyline week to week, you can't jump that storyline 12 weeks because then you'll lose. I get that you know where it was supposed to go because you're the wrestler, you're the entertainer, but you still have to lead the audience through it. And if you don't do that, they're going to be lost, and they're not going to watch, and they're going to be like, well, and it's always the same thing that you two and Craig and Eve, I think Cuz will even talk about it too. The matches are good. That's not the problem. That's just simply not the issue. The issue is, how do we get from week to week? How did we get here? I don't know how we got here, and even the story doesn't make sense or is not told too. So, that's really the issue. If you just want to watch good wrestling and not worry about the storyline, AEW is definitely for you right now. I mean, that's not, there's.
Yeah, I mean, they like every match. Every match is a banger. I mean, everything they put out is good for the most part. But something like to your point is, it's almost too good where you're like, I'm tired. Like,
yeah, I get to a point where with the third match that I see that looks like the first two before it, I'm like, Jesus, like it's like it's like when people who aren't sporting fans, like they're just like, oh, I don't really watch football, but when I do, I just turn it on in the fourth quarter because that's all I really care about. Like, because that's and I'm like, that makes sense. I mean, we all like the beginning and the ending or whatever, but like same thing with basketball. Like that's what I feel about basketball
for sure.
I'm just like, I'm just gonna turn it into the fourth quarter because that's all that really matters. Like, I don't care that. They went back and forth. And football, I can understand how people see the same thing. And like if you're not into something, but you get into something because of the characters and there's one voice and it's one type of product and like it's the same camera angles and it's the same thing.
Right.
You might see two different teams, but yeah, it's all about getting people to follow it. And then once people start following it, well, then they want to watch quarter one, quarter two, because it tells a story. It's like the first two quarters, this team was not good. They went in the halftime and they got their shit together, and then they came out and they were better in the third quarter and they stopped the run, and like that's wrestling's the same way. They just can make it do it. They can. Well, I mean, some people think that NFL's fixed, but I mean, like wrestling's completely like to me. I'm like, when wrestling puts on a bad show, I get more hard on them because I'm like, wait a minute, this is not real, and you wrote it from beginning to end, and you wrote a clusterfuck. Like, how could you let this happen? Like, how could you let this happen? I get more mad at wrestling shows when they suck, like because I'm like, you couldn't write this. Like, you can not do it. You know what your fans want. You know what people are saying about you online. You know what's selling and what's not selling. You could see the needles moving, and you chose to write garbage? What the fuck? Like, I get more annoyed at, wrestling promotions when they under-deliver, because I'm like, oh, you just didn't care. Like, you just didn't give a shit at all. You just let everybody get bugged. But also, go ahead, Joe.
No, I was going to say there, going back to a point that you said, I think, Dave, you said at the very beginning about that we're obviously in a very high period right now, and and maybe it's like one of the highest or the highest or whatever, just in terms of variety of things. I think what's interesting, what the biggest difference about this high period is that it's not centered around one person.
It's like, not.
The 80s was all Hogan. Like, without Hogan, it falls apart. Attitude Era only happens because of Steve Austin. Obviously, later The Rock comes in, but like the what made it mainstream was Austin, and NWO helping out with that. But now you don't. There's not one. I mean, as good as Roman is not Austin. He's not Hogan. Cody for sure isn't. So it's just interesting that the product itself has become the draw, and not just one individual. And I think that's probably what Vince always wanted. But so you can interchange the pieces real easily, and you don't lose any steam. So Roman goes away for 8 months.
It's fine.
It doesn't affect sales at all.
Yeah. It spikes when he comes back because that's awesome. We missed him, but you're right. It's not like the company went into a deficit when he left right away. You pull Hogan out. Hogan gets injured in 87, 88. It's a different company. It's totally different.
And there's also not one, and obviously like there's also not that period of time when the audience gets bored with that person and you don't know what to do either. Obviously like WWF was going through that, 91, 92, 93. They're like, dude, Hogan is just not drawing what he was. Like, we don't know what to do. We don't know which direction to go. They don't have anybody like set in place. I mean, the fact that when Austin kind of got injured and like, couldn't do it anymore, they just happened to accidentally also have Rock at the same time, which is just a little bit of good fortune.
I mean, same thing with Hogan. When Hogan took the self-imposed break when he went to film No Holds Barred, they had Savage, and that was a godsend because like Savage ended up hitting a home run and being this interesting champion that wasn't the same as Hulk, like, which is pretty fucking ballsy. Like when you have like Hulkamania running, and at that time, 87, 88, Hulk was still on absolute fire. Like, and then they put the title on Savage.
Macho doesn't get enough play. We talked about that. We talked about that probably more than most people. And Macho was
obviously, and then 2 years later, when they tried to do it with Warrior, it didn't work. Like sales, there was like sales dropped
because Warrior was Hogan. Like it was.
What are we watching?
It was. I'm just getting ready to go over the Survivor Series card, but to finish up our thoughts here. Like the whole thing with that is like Warrior was Hogan, and like he would Hulk up. He would do the same things that Hogan would do during matches or whatever. There was no difference between 100%. Hogan and Warrior, and they didn't try to have any different creative opponents for him either. So it was just like Hogan takes a break. Savage was totally different. Savage sold the entire match. Savage was the underdog because he was smaller than Hogan, and so he looked really small against Andre and Bundy and One Man Gang and all that stuff. But then he also could fight people like DiBiase, and Savage just worked. It was because of his character. He wasn't the same. Yeah. It's like Vince made another Hogan and then was shocked that it didn't work. Like it's like, well, I mean, you made a Hogan too. But I also, tomorrow, or actually today, at the time people are listening to this, we are on the eve, or we are on the day of Survivor Series. So there's 4 or 5 highlighted matches here. The first one here, we got the Survivor Series Wargames match. We have the OG Bloodline against New Bloodline, Roman Reigns, Sami Zayn, the Usos, and CM Punk versus Solo, Jacob, Tonga, and Big Bronson Reed, which I said last week. I really love that addition. That's going to be a Wargames match. That is going to be like a 40-minute movie, so get ready for that. And I mean that in a good way, right? Like they're going to do a lot of
in a good way, yeah.
For the World Heavyweight Championship, Gunther defends against Damian Priest. I know I have my opinions on the World Heavyweight Championship and just what it is, but these guys actually have decent chemistry, and their last match was really good. So I'm sure this match is going to be solid as well. I don't, and I look for Gunther to retain.
What are we thinking? Are we? Oh yeah,
yeah. I think Gunther's going to retain.
Kind of curious. Does he?
Yeah, he'll retain.
I like what they're doing with Damian's character. I still think there's from the Judgment Day. I think that's still going to haunt him a little bit. So I just, for some odd reason, feel like there might be some bullshit going on here. Not in a bad way, but like just some bullshit. So I think that Gunther still retains. Maybe Gunther goes over clean, but I like what they're doing with the face Damian. I do like they're giving him an edge. I really enjoy that. I just don't see Gunther losing the title.
The edge was so much needed. Good gravy. He was just there was
the rumor that I'm hearing, and it's just
especially when he held the title. It was too much.
Yeah, it's just a rumor. The rumor that I'm hearing is that I don't know what the future of Gunther's going to be. I mean, obviously bright, but I don't know what they're going to do. But I hear that they're looking for Punk to take the title off him at Royal Rumble, and then Punk's going to defend it against Drew at WrestleMania. So that's kind of because Drew's been out for a little bit. I don't know if it was an injury or just they're giving him time off or whatever, but Drew and Punk are not finished. So I feel that WrestleMania is probably going to be their match for the World Heavyweight Championship. So that's what I hear. I don't know that to be true, but we'll see. Then we have the women's War Games match. We have Rhea, we have Bianca Belair, Bayley, Naomi, and Io Sky versus Liv Morgan, Nia Jax, Raquel Rodriguez, Tiffany Stratton, and Candice LeRae in a War Games match. That's going to be, I'm sure, really entertaining as well. Let's see here. Then we have.
I just love how Candice gets thrown in randomly like that. But she's gonna do some amazing things. But how did Candice thrown in there? But
yeah, and then I want to say Io Sky had to take Jade's place because I think Jade is fighting a real injury, so they wrote her off the storyline in real life, as well. So she got attacked in the parking lot last week or whatever, and then has multiple injuries. But I think she has a regular injury and she can't wrestle right now, so that's why she was pulled. Then we have LA Knight defending the United States title against the returning Shinsuke Nakamura, who I just watched him on SmackDown tonight. He dresses all in black. He spits like black ink mist at people, so he's an evil Shinsuke. He's not wearing like the bright red anymore, the bright colors. So he's
they've revamped him for sure.
And he
pinned, but again, does LA Knight retain? It's Shinsuke is just going to lose again. Like it feels like to me, it's just like a no-win situation.
Yeah, I know. It's like I don't want LA Knight to lose. I want them to keep it on him because I think it's fine right now, and he's just getting used to holding a title.
I don't want Shinsuke to get crapped on again. Like, what are we doing? Like, I don't know.
I would rather.
Yeah, but I mean,
I would rather them revamp Shinsuke for like a second, like a mid-card title, than revamp him for the world title scene, because we all know, you know what I mean? Like, it's a criticism we had against Cody. Like, I love AJ, but it's like they just revamped AJ to lose to Cody, and it was like, but he lost all the time before anyway, so it didn't really matter. So I'd rather them do that here for the US, because you want to get defenses under LA Knight's belt, and if Triple H is in the land of I don't want to hot potato titles, and I want to breathe out title reigns, you got to give LA Knight some defenses. So probably he beat Shinsuke. Then
LA Knight won the title at SummerSlam?
Yeah, but it was SummerSlam, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think he has to hold the title till at least WrestleMania.
Yeah, I think so too. And then Intercontinental Champion Braun Breaker defends his title in a 3-way against Sheamus and Ludwig Kaiser. That's going to be good any way you slice it. Braun Breaker retains. I don't see Sheamus wearing it. I don't see Ludwig. Even though they've shown that they can beat Braun, which at first I was against, and I don't know if I like it all that much, but I think that Braun can show that he could take losses, and he's still got like that badass edge to him, so I like that a lot. And I felt like the time that he's lost, and he lost clean, like that. It didn't hurt him. It just kind of showed that they were kind of playing with this. This guy's explosive, but almost so explosive that he makes mistakes and is still kind of like a rookie. Right.
And so, that they we're not going with the, they're not doing what they did with Brock per se, but, that he's almost like.
Yeah. And I like that too. I mean, I'm just the Braun type of character. I don't mind you pulling a Goldberg with him or whatever, because I feel that Braun is like 35,000 times more talented than Goldberg ever was. So if there's anybody that can learn to adapt, it's Braun Breaker. Like, so I wouldn't have minded an undefeated streak with him going on because he's so talented. I don't think that like people like Goldberg, when he loses, the aura's gone. And that's all he had because he wasn't great in the ring. So if you take the aura away from him, I mean, you've just stripped him of his character. Whereas Braun, even if you give him that aura, even if he loses, he's so talented and gifted. I mean, he's literally Scott and Rick put together. Like, legitly, like, every time I watch him wrestle, I see both Rick and Scott in him. Like, and it's obvious. Like, I'm like, God, man, like, he moves just like his dad, or he does that, the way he sidesteps, or the way he runs to the ropes is just like Rick. Or just like Scott, it's like, it's crazy. Like, so I think that if you're going to do the aura of invincibility, it's smarter to do it with a guy like Braun, but it's okay. Like, I don't think he's hurt, and he's learning how to develop his character. So that's all good.
Yeah.
So that is Survivor Series. I'm sure it's going to be a great show. Then they also announced too, I know they announced a couple months ago, but Saturday night's main event is coming back to NBC on Saturday, December 14th. They just announced the main event. It's going to be Cody Rhodes defending the WWE Championship against Kevin Owens. So we got Saturday night's main event coming back. I wonder if that's going to be like a regular thing. They're going to try to do it a couple times a year or whatever. It's just so crowded with live television. You have a Raw and SmackDown and then a pay-per-view every month. Like, I don't know if there's room for Saturday night, but I don't think they're going to have a PLE in December. So I think that's why Saturday night's main event fits in nicely. So.
Oh yeah. So no Cody on this. No Cody on this. On this card.
It's got the internet crowd angry that Cody is not defending this championship. It's the second or third PLE in a row where he has not, because when he faced in Saudi Arabia, it was not for the titles when he faced Gunther.
Right.
So he wrestled, but he hasn't defended the title for like 3 PLEs straight, and the internet is not happy about that. No. Shit,
nobody cared when Roman did it. Roman defended like 3 times a year.
Yeah, right.
Lucky.
Like It's double standards, right? Like,
they were also like, but I felt like that was the thing that they had talked about was Cody was going to be a fighting champion and he was going to be around, and like that he was going to be on TV more.
Yeah, I get it. Me too, and I think that Cody is the type of character that
I still think he's been out there more than Roman has. That's a fact, but he hasn't defended it.
Yeah, he's on TV like every week still and all that stuff, doing promos.
Yeah.
He might even cut a promo tomorrow. Who knows? But I can't see him not being at Survivor Series, and I don't know who they're going to go. I mean, maybe they'll have a contract signing tomorrow with him and Kevin, or maybe there'll be some kind of weird interaction with him.
There you go.
Kevin. So they'll probably do something. But that's our Survivor Series, and
again, I'm not mad about any of it.
No,
it's gonna be fun. Are we expecting to see Dwayne tomorroh? What do we think about that?
I think so.
I mean,
I wouldn't be surprised because he returned for Bad Blood, was it, or whatever? So I would not be shocked if he returned tomorrow, and then counted numbers on his fingers and then left again for another 4 months. Like maybe, so. But we're getting WrestleMania March, so probably starting at the Royal Rumble, his presence is going to be felt a lot more. And that's.
I wonder if I only ask just because if we see Dwayne, do we see then Cody there as well? Like, does Dwayne have like not a run in, but he appears, makes an appearance and like fucks
if we
with the
don't
match?
see him at Survivor Series, we'll probably see Dwayne at Saturday Night's Main Event.
Yeah, it's probably
because he left it with telling Cody that he has unfinished business with him, so he left it that way on purpose. So he'll come after Cody at some point, and Cody will intertwine back in. I mean, Roman's not going to not want to challenge for the title for much longer. Like, he's going to get to a point where his character is just going to want to challenge for the title after the bloodline shit gets situated. And we didn't talk about that either. Like, Paul Heyman could turn there because they're putting little Easter eggs everywhere where he wore the same suit that Solo wore a couple of weeks ago or whatever.
Yeah, he's wearing all the red. Yeah,
they do shit like that on purpose, which I love because like they're making you guess or whatever. Is he really? I mean, Solo and them put Paul Heyman through a table. It wouldn't make any sense if Paul Heyman turned on Roman, but bringing CM Punk back in the mix and with Lesnar kind of looming, kind of been the accusations kind of weren't really true, and he's kind of like sort of like kind of free of all that. And now it's like, when's Lesnar going to come back? And then now you have Paul Heyman, who is like, does he want to break away from the bloodline and just go back to being Paul Heyman and managing guys like CM Punk and Brock? He had that was his old life, before the bloodline storyline. So I love it. I'm just like, oh, this is really good. And then Punk is so good on the mic. Like, he's going to be excellent in this storyline too. I didn't see them stitching Punk in like that. I mean, I remember.
I don't know. I was surprised that that's the route they went.
I remember the promo a couple of months ago, where like they were speaking in code, Punk and Paul Heyman were, and so you knew that they were setting the seeds, like they were planting the seeds for sure. I just had forgotten about that promo before they put Paul Heyman through a table, and then we haven't seen Paul Heyman for months. So it's
what do you want from me? He's like, take me with you.
He's like, take me with you. Yeah, like so it's Paul Heyman crying out to, well, I kind of want to just go back to being a manager. Like, I got in this bloodline shit, and I just a little too sticky for me. Like even for me, So I think that's Paul Heyman's character trying to, but so he might swerve and go with Punk, which would be awesome. But I don't know. Paul Heyman's so over. Can you imagine? Paul Heyman's a face and being cheered right now. That's crazy. This is the first time since the ECW crowds, because they loved him in ECW because he was the creator. So it's like he got ovations all the time in ECW. But he's been a heel.
Ladies and gentlemen,
his whole career in WCW, the first time was evil Paul Heyman with the stupid phone and annoying people and like he's always been a heel, always like for the most part.
Always.
So, Paulie. The
fact that he's so fucking over, like he got a hero's return pop when he came back last week, so that's really fun to see. And he's a goddamn genius, so of course,
he is, he really is.
But
I like that Punk. It seems a little weird that he's in there, but if it perpetuates the story, it's better than trying to like just because I thought they were just going to stick Cody in there.
Oh, that would be
bad. It's like
that would be boring and bad.
And exactly. I thought so I was glad to see them not go that route. And I was like, oh, Punk. Oh, I hadn't thought of that. But like, different.
Well, that is our weekend. Happy Survivor Series, everybody. And we're heading towards the end of the year. At some point on Unscripted in December, we will do our year-end awards, best match, wrestler of the year, female wrestler of the year. So that's coming up in a couple weeks. And, but yeah, I don't know. Joe, do you have a catchphrase to sign us out here? I don't have a catchphrase. I can't steal Craig's.
Oh,
I feel Craig will file a lawsuit against me. Craig's like that, so I don't want to.
Patent pending.
Yeah, I don't want to anger him right now. Just putting you on the spot.
No catchphrase.
Oh, there it is. Well, that's the thing. All right, you guys. We'll see you next week. Goodbye, everybody.